Hello and welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the big interview. And today's special guest is a tour coach, a high performance coach, a master's professional, Mr. Hugh Marr. Hugh, thanks for coming on the show.
No, it's a pleasure, Adam. Nice to be on.
Now, Hugh, I've got lots of questions for you today, and we're going to tap into your knowledge and experience to give the viewers hopefully some golden nuggets on how they can improve their coaching and improve their coaching business. Now, Hugh, I know that you're a big believer in the master professional, that golf coaches should become experts in their fields. Can you explain a little bit to the viewers what that means exactly and how that may differ from some of the current coaching trends?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of factors here. There's the current coaching trends, and there's also the existing sort of education system or paradigm that I think most PGAs are guilty of offering. In that there seems to be a move towards becoming very certified and having sort of a little bit of knowledge in a lot of areas, and which totally conflicts with my perspective that you've become really expert at something and then continually add more relevant areas. And for me, the challenge with the certification process is that you never really get a thorough, in-depth, nuts and bolts understanding of what you're coaching, and it means that the offering that coaches make is not significant enough. I don't think as an industry we're particularly good at coaching the game of golf, because experience is becoming less and less relevant, and the more certifications you have, the more you're viewed as being an expert, when just you're not. You are the sort of classic master of all trades, or jack of all trades, master of none. And I've become quite passionate about this over the last couple of years, that I want to see coaches being expert coaches. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to coach on tour. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're only coaching elite players. There's expert coaches at every single level: expert disabled coaches, ladies coaches, junior coaches, club coaches. And becoming expert in your particular field, I think, is more important than just becoming qualified in a whole load of fairly meaningless certifications.
So being a master is what the word suggests, doesn't it? You are knowledgeable in one field and you're an expert in that field, rather than sort of a little bit of everything. It's interesting. You're running a mentoring program to help coaches improve their knowledge, and obviously to improve their business and coaching ability. Tell us a little bit more about your program.
Well, this was basically driven by my kind of passion for getting coaches better. I'm a massive believer that the only stakeholders in the game of golf that can deliver in pretty much anything and everything are PGA professionals, are coaches. We introduce people to the game. It's our job to develop a passion for the game. It's our job to retain people. It's our job to make the game a safe, friendly, social, enjoyable environment. And we do that through offering great golf lessons. We do that through offering a great golf community. And I was becoming increasingly disillusioned with, as I said, the certification process, with how people were going about qualifying themselves. And we're getting further and further away from the only thing that matters, which is looking after the people that come to us for golf instruction or for golf coaching. It's for me, the only person that matters is the golfer. If we can create this environment and this culture in the game that attracts and retains people, we're doing our best for the game of golf. And this was really this is what really motivated me to set this program up, because I think that's being neglected. It's not being pushed hard enough by the PGAs. Regrettably, I think the role of the professional in the club environment is becoming more and more irrelevant. We're becoming less and less golf professionals and more golf administrators. And that just doesn't sit well with me. Traditionally, you're of a similar generation to me, but we were brought up in an environment where the professional was the center of club life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's that's dying. We're seeing clubs taking professional shops and professionals' operations in-house, paying them a salary, and effectively confining golf professionals, golf coaches to a desk, where, and I just don't think that's great for the development of the game.
Because it was always the case that the history of the game, the etiquette, the traditions, the knowledge always came from the golf professional, didn't it? That was
correct.
Like you said, the heartbeat of the club. Prize givings, I remember as a junior, were given by a golf professional. Everything came through the professional at the club.
The professional is the golf expert.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of number of principles that it's called the Coach Mastery Program. There's a number of principles that this is built on, but the two most important pillars of the program are that it is our job to grow and better the game.
Yeah.
And we're doing that through becoming master coaches, becoming expert coaches. It's not necessarily about creating knowledge per se. It's about giving each and every student on the program, each and every coach, the skills to be able to develop in a relevant manner, getting them to understand that coaching isn't about gaining certificates and developing knowledge. It's about knowing what to do with that knowledge. It's about understanding that coaching in itself is an art. And the challenge with the certification model is that we get further and further away from the art of coaching. What makes great coaching? How to interact with people, how to moderate your language and moderate how you communicate your message to different players. And while there is clearly quite a heavy technical element to the course, there's an awful lot of time devoted to making them better coaches and getting these coaches to understand that they are fundamentally the single most important people in golf.
Now, Hugh, you're considered to be one of the top coaches in Europe, if not in the world. You work with many of the top professionals on the tour. How does coaching the top players in the world vary from that of a weekend golfer? What's the biggest difference? Your patience, maybe.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm not sure there is much of a difference.
No?
Because coaching is such a journey. The great challenge of coaching tour pros is that you always have to have an eye on them performing well now, but also you have to have half an eye on how that fits into their long-term development. How are they going to get better over time? And in real terms, I'm not sure that coaching club players is any different.
Okay.
That they want to play well right now, but equally, the majority of them have ambitions to play better. And I think because of this kind of influx of sports science and, as I said, certification, coaching is becoming much more formulaic. It's becoming much more cut and paste. So nice, big, sexy coaching plans and development plans are now something that are viewed as desirable. And actually, I think there's still an argument that what you and I would refer to as tip coaching, quick tip coaching, is part of that long-term development. For golfers to retain golfers in the game and make it enjoyable, they want to play with a degree of competence at their skill level. And selling this package or this belief that actually, you know what, you've got to get better you've got to get worse to get better, and improvement takes time, I think it's just nonsense. If you're any good from a coaching perspective, you can make players better very quickly. By making the right change, the relevant change.
The relevant changes,
and that doesn't need to be exclusive from a long-term plan to make them better over time.
Okay. Are the expectations level different, or would you say they're the same? We know like the tour has a reputation for lack of patience with coaches, whereas maybe a weekend golfer would be a little bit more patient, or not necessarily.
Let's face it, the environment and culture is very different in that, of course, they have a lack of patience because every year they start at the bottom and they all start equal on nothing, and they have to find a way to either retain their playing rights or increase their status. So there is an element of urgency with regards to coaching on tour. But equally in the club world, you get some people that are itching to get better quick and some that aren't.
Yeah.
In the professional world, you have people that are very, very impatient. I need to play well now. And you've got people that are able to maybe see a slightly bigger picture and be a little bit more patient.
Okay, so it's very similar.
The one thing that I've learned in 20 years of doing this is that there's no one type, there's no one model, there's no one way. Everyone approaches it differently.
What you've been around a lot of top coaches, and obviously you considered yourself as a top coach as well. What separates the good coaches from the top coaches, in your opinion?
It's no different to playing the game. The top coaches are just better.
Are they better in any one area, or are they just better as a total package?
No, they're better in their area. I think that the top coaches have very much built their own principles and preferences relating to how they coach the game and how the game should be played from a mechanical perspective, strategy perspective, etc. I think the majority of top coaches have developed that themselves. And the simple reason that or one of the, I guess, the explanations of why that makes them a top coach is if you've developed your principles and your preferences from the ground up, you understand them in an intimate manner. Whereas if you've just gone and certified yourself, you've just got this very, very baseline knowledge. You don't have that real depth. You might have a breadth of knowledge. You might be able to say that I've got this qualification in putting, this in chipping, I've got this mind coach qualification. But in real terms, when you start to dig beneath the surface, that depth of knowledge, which is fundamentally expertise, that depth of knowledge doesn't exist. Whereas the very best, the Pete Cowens, the Dennis Pughs, the Mike Walkers, they've all built it from the ground up. It's theirs. They own it. They understand it in such intimate detail that it takes an awful lot of digging for that to break down.
So would you say they've all got their own methods then, and because they've built that method, they know it inside out?
Yeah, I think method's the wrong term, just because it suggests that this is how you do it. This is the only way to do it. Yeah, but system for sure. Absolutely. I think they've all,
because we all learn from someone, don't we? We're all coaches.
Absolutely.
We've all read hundreds of books. We've all listened to the top coaches, and you take pieces of information. We're not reinventing the wheel. So there must be,
correct.
You create your own system, but it's based obviously on the knowledge you've gathered from other experts.
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
Hugh, what negative experiences have helped you become a better coach?
Everyone, because ultimately it's particularly on tour, but equally back home, I've always been driven by this. I don't know everything, but if there's something out there that I need to know, I'm going to go out and find it. So I've never necessarily viewed it as negative experiences. I've much more viewed them, right, well, actually, it's very obvious that I don't know enough about this topic and I need to know more about it to help this player in front of me. So I guess the moments where I've hit a speed bump or a roadblock, I guess one of my skills is that I've been smart enough to go, right, I don't have that answer, but I'm going to go away and find it because I know I'm going to need that answer with this player. And there's a chance that if I need it with this player, I'm probably going to need it with other players further down the line.
So there is no
I would never
aspect, actually.
Yeah. And it's certainly as young coaches, it can be very daunting when you spend time with experts. You suddenly feel, Christ, I don't really know anything here. But if you take that experience and use it in a constructive manner, that, okay, I know I don't know anything. So what's the first piece I need to know? And then the second piece and the third piece and the fourth piece. And you use your experiences. You use those moments where you don't have an answer to drive how you develop, rather than you take the certification model where effectively you're paying and giving up time to be given answers to questions you might never be asked. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it never made sense, both from a commercial perspective or from a learning perspective, that why do I want to know stuff that's irrelevant? Why am I going to pay sometimes huge amounts of money? Why am I going to take time away from my facility and my students? So it's basically costing you at both ends to be given answers to questions I will never be asked. That made no sense to me. Whereas the more coaching I did, the more I understood the stuff that I needed to know now. And that drove me to go away and find that out. And I've been pretty stubborn about that throughout my career.
You mentioned that when I spoke to you a few weeks ago, the relevant knowledge,
100%.
not just knowledge, but the knowledge you need now to help you with your coaching.
And fundamentally, you are paid as a golf coach to make players better.
Yeah.
If you do that, you're ticking all the boxes I touched on earlier. You're growing the game, you're bettering the game, you're creating an environment for people to have fun, you're creating a community where people come to spend their leisure time. And ultimately, it's if you make the player better, you achieve all of that. And coaches need to remember that they are not being paid to show someone how much they know. They're not being paid by the word. You're being paid to make that player at that point in time a better golfer. That's
important. If you started again tomorrow, would you change anything about your coaching career?
No, absolutely nothing. Maybe I tried to start earlier, but no, absolutely nothing. I mean, it's you go back to the question you asked about what's the difference between great and good as coaches are concerned. I became a golf geek the minute I touched a golf club. Every magazine, every book, every video. Obviously, we didn't have the internet back in we barely had electricity back when I was starting, but I was just passionate about learning stuff that made me a better golfer to start with. This basically golf coaching didn't really exist in the mid to late 80s. So I had quick tip lessons. There was no real expert coaches. So a lot of my development was I had to do myself. But actually, little did I know that was the start of my journey of discovering the things I needed to know at the time as a player to get better. And then I applied the same principles to my coaching. But no, I wouldn't change a thing. The internet generation are in a position where suddenly there's an urgency to everything. They have to get it. They have to become great early, and they have to become great quickly. And I don't want to sound like the old-fashioned guy, but I guess I'm the old-fashioned guy that there is no way to short-circuit this process.
There's no
experience is still the most important thing when it comes to coaching this game well. And you have a choice. You can either use your experience to make you better in relevant areas, or you can use your experience to continue to go and look for a million different answers.
That's interesting.
You can't. The only way to short circuit this is to use those experiences you have to make you better now. No different to playing the game.
Yeah. Is there a if you're a young coach watching this now, would you feel like I have no experience? Does that mean I can't be a good coach? What would be the most important advice you would give them? Because if I'm a young coach now listening to you, I'm thinking like, you think experience is the most important thing, mastery of the subject. Well, I don't have any of them. Does that mean I can't be a good coach until I'm older? What would be the most important information you'd give them, a young coach starting out right now?
Well, first of all, I think there is an assumption going into coaching now that it isn't necessarily a talent, which I would disagree with. Some people are just more gifted at interacting and helping human beings than others. Not everyone is born equal. But because you're dealing with this game of infinite variables, with infinite subtlety and nuance, with effectively an infinite number of students, there is no, you can't find the answer straight away. That answer is something that you develop over time. Now, does this mean that you can't become a good coach? Categorically not. But I do think if you go down the route that the PGAs are pushing you now, and that certificates are more important than experience, I don't think you're going to become a great coach. Right. That great coach comes from you building your principles, your beliefs, your preferences from the ground up. And that takes time. But the great thing about this, and I mean, you would never say this to every student in front of you, But every single student that you see, and I still view this the same way now, every single student you see is a case study, is an opportunity for you to better your skills relevant to that pupil. And as I said earlier, if it's relevant to that pupil, there's a pretty decent chance it's going to be relevant to someone else further down the line.
Yeah.
But you have a diary of case studies. That's phenomenal. But if you view them as a diary of case studies, you've always got this kind of living, moving template to direct your own development.
Yeah. Where you're thinking, what can I do to improve this person? Why am I not helping them as much as I could? Or what skills am I missing to get through to this person? Or why are they not improving? So it's a constant. That's part of the self-development as well, man.
Correct. And if you just think about it purely from a social perspective, if you're a 35-year-old tour pro who's got 10, 15 years of experience of playing on tour, are you going to be credible as a 25-year-old, as a coach?
Yeah.
Chances are this player knows more than you do.
Yeah.
And I think you have this sweet spot, which I'm thinking I'm in the middle of right now, this sweet spot where you're relevant enough to be able to deal with youngsters and you're experienced enough to be able to deal with the older players.
Yeah.
And obviously, as you get older, you get to a point where your ability to interact and be relevant to youngsters becomes harder. But ultimately, if I'm 40 years old playing on tour, I've won 5 times. Am I genuinely going to see a 25-year-old who's had his first year coaching on tour as credible? I don't think so.
No, because you've seen too much.
Yeah.
Hugh, how have let's move on to technology, modern technological advances, how have they helped your coaching personally, and how have they helped your students perform better?
From a coaching perspective, my understanding has increased exponentially with the quality of technology, no question. And because of that, I'm able to communicate more effectively with my students, and I'm able to make more relevant changes with my students. It's that simple. I've basically been a TrackMan guy for the better part of 10, 12 years. And I would consider myself a master at using TrackMan. I understand TrackMan better than pretty much every coach on the planet, which guess what? I'm a master at it. That makes me more effective at using it. But please do not mistake using technology as great coaching or collecting data as great coaching. Neither are coaching. Yeah, that is what you do with it that is the gold, if you like. And we're seeing this generation of coaches now. We've got 2 quite unique scenarios now, in that we've got a lot of coaches who think they're scientists, and a lot of scientists that think they're coaches. Now, there's no doubt that a proper scientist's knowledge and insight and understanding and research can make us better as coaches. But what are you? If you're a scientist, then please don't try and coach. And if you're a coach, please don't try and be a scientist, because neither fundamentally help that golfer in front of you right now. Mm-hmm. And again, the concern for me with technology is how it's used.
How it's being used, yeah.
Yeah. And if I want to buy a mechanic, then I'm going to go and seek a biomechanic. I'm not going to go and seek a golf coach who has bought a biomechanics system from a biomechanic. I mean, who are you going to go to? You're going to go to the guy that built the system, who's all of his principles are put into developing that system, rather than someone that has got it and become certified.
Right.
And that ultimately, gathering data is not golf coaching. First of all, you've got to get the data. Then you've got to disseminate the data and figure out, okay, which is the bit that's really going to make a difference. Mm-hmm. Then you get to work on that.
And part of that's also not sharing all the unnecessary data with the student. Now, we had that,
100%.
We see it all the time.
100%.
Your club's doing this, you've got this many degrees loft, you've got 1 degree open, and the student's like, yeah, but I'm still slicing it.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly right. And ultimately, I mean, I guess one of the ways that I use TrackMan as a bullshit filter for me, in that once I've gone through my analysis process, then I'm like, right, this is the data point that we are looking to influence. And it'll be 1, 2, maximum of 3 data points.
Yeah.
So if we have a player that isn't creating enough shaft lean or hitting down on it enough, we're going to be looking at attack angle, we're going to be looking at launch angle. And that's the only 2 data points that end up on the screen.
Yeah.
So then if the piece of advice that I give them does not shift those data points, it's not the correct piece of advice.
Okay.
I'm taking responsibility for this player's improvement. How many coaches are genuinely doing that? How many coaches are then turning around and saying, well, Adam, you know what, just keep doing it. You'll get better at it. If you make the right change, you should see a shift in that ball flight within 3 shots.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, if you're not doing that, you're missing something.
Does that depend at all on the talent that's in front of you? Because I know people will be at home listening to this and thinking, yeah, but if I've got an 80-year-old lady who, you know, can hardly hold the club and swing the club, maybe she can't do what I'm asking her to do. You hear that quite often as an excuse from some of the pros, that talent in front of them isn't able to do what you want to do. What would you say to that?
You've just answered your own question. Yeah. They can't do what you're asking them to do. Is that their fault or yours? You're asking them to do the wrong thing.
Wrong information.
Yeah.
So it's about the coach taking the responsibility and saying, if the result's not changing and they can't do what I want them to do, I'm giving them the wrong information.
100%. 100%.
Going on to the business aspect, you know that I set up this YouTube channel specifically to get into the heads of some of the top coaches, but also from a business point of view. You know, the business of coaching, which is a part that's neglected in today's education. We'll come to that later. What business skills specifically do you think a modern golf professional needs to build a successful business?
The same business skills you needed 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Ultimately, let's strip this down a little bit first, and then we'll kind of come back to the answer. So we are a service industry. We're a hospitality industry. I have never heard anyone tell that to coaches. Now, if it's a service industry and a hospitality industry, the customer is the very center of that. Mm-hmm. So if that's your principle that you build your business development on, then you've got a baseline that you can effectively refer back to for any business decision you choose to make. So let's say electronic booking system. There are people that will appeal to, and there are people that will not appeal to. So my business decision there is, well, what's going to piss off people less? It doesn't sound like a particularly lofty ambition, but I think it's quite important. So I guess I've got a certain reputation in the game, although I don't necessarily walk around thinking that every day. So if someone emails me or drops me a message, I'm going to reply and I'm going to have a conversation with them. Why? Because I want that person to feel special from the very off. So you have a choice. You can pick up the phone and say, Adam, thank you very much for getting in touch. Hope you're well. Tell me a bit about your game. How can I help you? Or you can send an email back saying, go to this link and book in. What ticks the hospitality service industry customer box better? And I'm maybe I'm a little ideological about this, I don't know, but the reality is that if you look after your clients really well, you'll never ever have a problem retaining and growing. If that becomes too remote and you lose that personal interaction, I can understand why people would go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And the reality is that I'm, as I said, I fully recognize I'm a little old-fashioned in this regard, but this is about looking after your clients well. And golf clubs are exactly the same.
Yeah.
Golf clubs who spend all their marketing money on trying to grow their membership, whereas if you spent that on really looking after your membership would grow anyway. Exactly.
It would attract people anyway.
So I think it's that technology offers so many positives in modern life, but as soon as you lose that personal connection in a people industry, I would be concerned as to, are you genuinely offering the best service you can?
So the business skills would always come back, all your business decisions and all your business skills would come back to just keeping the customer as the focus.
100%. And I still believe that to be the case. I think it's the whole Instagram route as well. Instagram's a marketing thing. We could, I mean, that's we can do an entire episode on that if you want.
Yeah, no, I'm not going down that road.
No. I
spoke to you about that before.
Social media is such a means of communicating now. But again, you lose the personal interaction with the clients.
Now, I think you've already answered this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What trends are you seeing in golf today that you don't agree with? Maybe other than the ones you've already mentioned, certification, social media, losing perspective of the customer. What other golf trends are you seeing that you don't think are right?
You pretty much covered most of them. The certification model, definitely don't believe that's good for the game of golf. It's part of development, but it is not development. The two can't be confused. The coach scientists and the scientist coaches, I don't think we'll keep this specific to coaching, I guess. The lack of personal interaction, that this shift now that the professional's not the center of the golf club, the professionals are becoming more admin based, they're less playing and coaching based. That's definitely detrimental to the development of the game. I got to say that I think governing bodies controlling equipment is potentially bad for the game.
Okay, interesting.
That's ultimately, let's face it, the game is bloody difficult. Golf is hard, and if growing, bettering the game is our focus, and certainly the RNA and the USGA would say that was part of the focus. Doing everything we can to make the game more fun and a little less difficult is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that professionals are hitting it a silly long way now, but there are other ways to mitigate that. I think that's about it. I mean, we've still got the same battles as a game. It's a hard game to fall in love with when it takes time, it's expensive, it isn't still not as accessible as it should be. There's still that rich white man sport. The
barriers still exist, don't they? For sure.
The barriers still exist, and I think we need to look at this another way. It's every year there seems to be a whole raft of these participation drives, and they all look exactly the same. They're just packaged slightly different. I'm not suggesting that I've got the answers here, but ultimately it's still a hard game to fall in love with, and we can do more to address that.
We're doing it right now, I hope, but how can we help other coaches improve their knowledge and give them the skills today to become better coaches? What can we do as fellow coaches, fellow golf professionals?
Well, one of the sort of recurring themes in my coach mastery program is, right, what's the single thing you can do now that's going to make you better tomorrow? So I touched on how sort of playing the game and coaching the game, there are parallels, and I refer to them as painless gains. What's that little change you can make right now with very little effort that can make you better? And I'm hoping as coaches we apply that to our players, but why are we not applying that principle to ourselves? That ultimately, we all know there's something tiny little thing that can make you better.
Yeah, sure.
What is it? Go and do it. And if you did that every week or every day or every month, you're going to be a better coach. Sure. My piece of advice would always be that whenever you try and make an improvement to what you do, whether it's in terms of your communication, your use of technology, how you interact with your students, or finding out knowledge, it must be relevant to your students. Make it relevant all the time. Don't go and learn something that you'll never use.
You're never going to use, or you then put onto your students who don't necessarily need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. If it's irrelevant, it ain't going to make them better, is it?
Do you think the world of golf is helping each other? Do you think coaches are helping each other?
No, because there's a number of reasons. The golf world has always been very good at operating in silos, in their own little bins, if you like, little buckets. If you look at the construct of every golfing nation, there's still 4, 5, 6 different organizations that have got some task in terms of the game. That needs to be broken down. The UK, we've got PGA, we've got BIGA, we've got the Course Managers Association, we've got England Golf, we've got 34 different unions.
Unions.
Then we've got the LGU and RNA. Now, that isn't functional. If you talk to any sort of captain of industry and who run big corporations and explain that to them, they look at you like you're crazy. That needs to get broken down.
To be one big
quickly.
organization,
Yeah,
ideally.
Quickly.
That brings us on to the last question, and we've had interesting discussions about this one before. Is the education provided by the PGAs and the various associations in the world relevant for the success and development of a golf coach? And what do we need to change in this area?
We need to change how the coaches utilize the education offering. That if coaches could become better critical thinkers, understand, right, this is where my biggest win is going to come now, go and educate themselves from a relevant perspective, then they're using the system to their benefit. I am a little confused as to what PGAs offer now. Is it a qualification process to become a professional golfer? Is it an ongoing education process? Is it a members association to look after the interests of the members? Or is it a member benefit association? Now, the reality is it's probably a little bit of everything, but by definition, the biggest revenue stream will become the most important, will become the focus of that organization. I get that associations that offering ongoing education opportunities is fundamental to the development or the growth of that association. But the coaches have got to understand how they're going to use that to get the most out of it. Yeah. That would be the change that I would make. This is actually on the coaches. It's not on the associations. Yeah. That don't believe that the more certified you become, the better you will become at coaching. Don't believe that the more certified you become, the more people you will be coaching. There isn't a correlation. If you prove that you're really good at coaching the standard of player you coach, you will get more business.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
Yeah. Do you think, like, when you say that it's the coach's responsibility to use the organizations correctly, do you think they offer the correct services, or do you feel like the information that you need as a coach today to be better is there, or have you got to go elsewhere to get it?
Good question. I mean, the reality is that is the information there? It's there somewhere.
Somewhere. Might
not necessarily be delivered by the associations. Certainly, my experience would be that if you put your hand up and say, Mr. PGA of Great Britain, I want to offer a certification in X, the decent chance that it'll take you 5 minutes to get them to say, yep, come on, let's do it.
Right.
But again, that's on the coaches.
Yeah.
That you can access pretty much anything now. There is no barrier to accessing information or qualification or education or increased knowledge. Nothing gets in the way. Can the PGA offer everything? Of course they can. So I've been pretty good at bashing PGAs for 25 years, but the reality is they cannot be all things to all people.
No.
So why don't we have the courage as individual coaches to take it on board and say, well, I need to go and find this information somewhere. And if the PGA can't provide it, I know it's out there somewhere else. Go do it.
Yeah. Cool. Hugh, it's been interesting and really great. Really great to hear your insights. I know it's gonna be very, very interesting for coaches out there to have a moment to think about where they are right now and what they're doing, especially in regards to the mastery and improving the student in front of you. I'm a big fan of your mentality and your ideas. And it's great to have had you on the show. So I appreciate that a lot. Thank you for.
No, it's a pleasure. Thoroughly enjoyed it, Adam. It's been great. Always good to talk to you.
So thank you, everybody. That was the big interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure you did. Some great information, some great insights to one of the top coaches in Europe. And I think we're all going to have a moment to think about where we are at the moment with our coaching and what we can do better. Please like it if you did and share it if you think it can help somebody else. I'll be back with more content soon and with more interviews, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.